And once again, I am continuing my journey through this collection of classical tragedy, Greek and Roman, and I've now come to the last play in the collection, which is Medea by Seneca. Now, this is the second Medea play in this collection. We've already read Euripides' Medea, and I'll link to my review of that in the description down below in case you missed it. But now we're to Seneca's Medea. Now, this collection contains two plays from Seneca. It contains two plays from every author. And as let me back up. The previous play was Oedipus by Seneca, which I already reviewed, and again, I'll link to that in the description down below in case you missed it. But in that, I gave some background on Seneca, and I'll try not to repeat everything I said in that video, but just to summarize the main points. Seneca is apparently the only surviving Roman tragedian, tragic playwright, to have survived. So if you're going to do a collection on classical tragedies, Greek and Roman, then Seneca is the only Roman that we have that has survived. And he has done his plays based on Greek myths, Greek stories. And I'm not sure about all of his plays. I think there's like 9 surviving plays from Seneca. But the two that are in this collection are very closely modeled on other Greek plays. So Oedipus we already talked about, but that was very closely modeled on Oedipus the King by Sophocles. Now we come to Medea, which is very closely modeled on Medea by Euripides. Now these were, of course, stories that were common in the Greek and Roman world, so Euripides did not invent the story of Medea. But I'm given to understand, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, I'm given to understand that although the basic story existed, Euripides created the structure of the play. And if I'm wrong about that, somebody let me know. If there's some like lost epic poem or not lost epic poem that has the same structure which Euripides was borrowing, let me know. But this is pretty much the same structure as Euripides. So if we credit Euripides with the structure, then I guess Seneca is copying this. So there's Medea talking to her nurse is the opening scene, just like in Euripides' play, and the chorus as well. Then Creon, the king of Corinth, comes to banish Medea, but Medea pleads for one more day, and Creon eventually relents, just like in Euripides' play. And then Jason shows up for a... there's a lot of monologues here. Jason shows up to talk to Medea, and there is mutual recriminations, just like in Euripides' play. There is one thing that is missing in Seneca's version. In Euripides' play, there's also a scene where the king of Athens shows up. What was his name? I forgot his name. Here we go. Aegeus. He shows up in Euripides' play, but he's not in Seneca's play. So that is a difference. But then aside from that, then Medea plots her revenge. She sends off the cursed dress and the cursed crown, just like in Euripides' play. She hears about the success of her cursed gifts via messenger, and then she kills her children, just like in Euripides' play. So again, the basic myth, I think, was not created by Euripides, but I think that structure of these scenes and these conversations happening in this order is from Euripides, right? So Seneca is just largely taking the same structure as Euripides' plays, just with some differences. but largely taking the same structure, just like his Oedipus play was largely taking the same structure as Sophocles' play. Which raises the question, and I had the same question when I was reviewing Oedipus by Seneca. What's the purpose of this? Why are we just reading the same story over again with some slight differences? And this brings me to a disclaimer, which I should have put at the beginning of this video, but better late than never. I don't really have any intelligent commentary to say. You know, this is my first time through. I'm learning about these plays for the first time. I haven't absorbed a lot of knowledge about them. I didn't necessarily do a deep read. I just kind of read through them once. So I did do a little bit of research on Wikipedia and watched a couple YouTube videos on Seneca's Medea, and I'll link to the videos I watched in the description down below. But by and large, I'm probably not going to have a lot of intelligent things to say, but I'll just muddle through this as best I can. And if you can't be bothered watching the whole video, I understand. This is your invitation to turn the video off now. But I'm gonna try and muddle through some of this stuff. So there are a couple essays accompanying this, and there are a couple essays accompanying Seneca's previous play in this collection. One by no less than T.S. Eliot, and the other one by Robert W. Corrigan, who is also the editor of this whole book. And it seems to be, I mentioned this in the previous video, but I guess Seneca, just by virtue of being more available to the Elizabethan authors, Seneca's sense of drama had a much bigger impact on Shakespeare and the other Elizabethan authors, just because, Seneca was more widely read during that period for whatever reason. I guess they were using him as a model of Latin, and he was more available in translation. So Seneca's sensibilities are historically important for the development of Elizabethan drama, or I guess the development of English drama in general. But aside from that, you read the commentary, and it's very hard to find anyone saying much good words about Seneca. The praise you do find is very ambivalent or very conditional. Like, okay, Seneca's characters are terrible, and okay, his speeches are way too long, and okay, his stuff is way too gruesome, but at least we can thank him for this and this and this. I don't know. I'm not sure why Seneca felt the need to write this when he was just going to follow Euripides' model so closely. Something which T.S. Eliot mentions in his essay on Seneca is Seneca was actually doing this in Latin verse. So he was following the meter of Latin poetry, which I guess would be one reason to rewrite this in Latin, because the original was in Greek. So if you want to do this in Latin poetry, you need to rewrite it in Latin. But T.S. Eliot also does say that he doesn't think Seneca's verse was especially top-notch. I think he says it's not nearly as good as Virgil's. The other difference is there's more violence on stage, which is apparently a difference between the Greek dramas and the Roman dramas. So this was true in Oedipus as well, where in Seneca's version of Oedipus, Jocasta kills herself on stage. In the original Greek version, it was off stage. With Medea killing her children, that happened off stage in Euripides' version. It was reported, but you didn't actually see it. But here in Seneca's version, Medea kills her children on stage. There is, and I mentioned this before in my previous Seneca video, there is a lot of debate about whether these plays were actually performed or whether they were purely written just to be read. I think all the stuff I've watched on it seems to be about 50-50. Like 50% of the people, I think, says that it was never meant to be performed. 50% of the people said, yes, this was actually performed. So there's some debate about whether these scenes were actually performed on the stage, but there they are, at least in the script taking place on stage, whether or not there was an actual stage or an actual performance. Another interesting tidbit I picked up from a podcast which was doing an analysis of this play, and I'll try and remember to link to that podcast in the description down below. Actually, it was a really interesting podcast, or a really interesting episode from that podcast. Your time might be better served checking that out instead of listening to me. But anyways, he was saying that there's a difference between how sympathetic Medea is being portrayed as. So in Euripides' version, Medea, at the beginning of the play, it's not quite clear what option she's going to take. She's presented as a character who's has options available to her and is still considering what to do. In Seneca's version, she's presented as a character who's more evil right from the start. Although that being said, I do think she was, in Seneca's version, she is definitely going a little bit back and forth on whether or not she's going to kill her children. This is something maybe that gentleman who did the podcast brushed over a little bit. But she definitely does have a soliloquy where she is going to kill her children, and then she talks herself out of it, and she's not going to kill her children, and then she returns to killing her children. As in Euripides' version. But she is definitely, I guess maybe the point might be in Seneca's version, she is definitely set on revenge from the beginning, some sort of revenge. The Seneca's version has much more emphasis on the sorcery aspect of it. So Medea is portrayed like we would a very stereotypical image of a witch, where she is creating a magic potion filled with all these terrible things and doing her chants over it. I'm trying to see where that part was. Sorry, let me see if I can flip through and find her creating the potion. But yeah, that's another version. That's another difference here. So there are these differences. The commentaries at the end here make a big deal about how Seneca's characters were influenced by his Stoic philosophy. I didn't notice that so much when I was reading the play, but I guess now that when it's pointed out, it makes a little bit of sense. Like the nurse is urging Medea to just kind of take her misfortunes in stride without making a big deal out of them, without making her situation worse. I guess that's a Stoic philosophy. I mean, they never really use the word Stoicism here, but yeah, and that reminds me, one of the points that made in one of the essays at the end is that Seneca's plays tend to have a lot more moralizing in them than the Greek plays. So the original Euripides, the original play by Euripides, yeah, here it is. It's somewhere around here. Yeah, so Seneca's use of sententiae, wise sayings in his dialogue. Now, Euripides was of the opinion that some of these dramatic issues could not be resolved. So his plays lack revolution because he couldn't think of a way of resolving some of the conflict. Seneca has much more of a moral he wants to get across. I guess this is influenced by his Stoic philosophy. So his characters have a lot more wise sayings. Yeah, it's a bit odd. The podcast I was referring to earlier mentioned this. It's a bit odd that a philosopher or historical figure that we associate with so much dignity and stoicism was writing these like really violent, gory plays. And the podcast mentioned that at some point there was people thinking that maybe there were two Senecas. One Seneca who wrote the plays and another Seneca was the Stoic philosopher. But I guess the modern consensus is that these were written by the same Seneca. And, for whatever reason, either for just pure entertainment value or because he had some sort of purpose with it, he would write these dark, violent plays. Yeah. I'm sorry. This video is a real mess, isn't it? I don't really have anything intelligent to say about it. So maybe I should just end things off here. I read it. I found it readable. I wasn't quite sure why I was reading it when I already read Euripides' version of the same story, but yeah, it was entertaining. I'll link to some of the YouTube videos I watched on this play in the description down below, and rest assured their commentary is much more intelligent than mine, so be sure to check them out. And I guess I'll finish here.